affair coworker called me but didn't know my husband was listening. Karma got me hard. For the first time ever, I found myself in a situation where I couldn't find a way out. I cheated on my husband with my coworker, and he didn't think twice before revealing his true colors to me. The fact that my affair partner was my coworker worsened the situation and made my husband more furious. Over the years, I have held myself with pride and was sure that I wouldn't cheat on anyone that I ended up dating or marrying. My husband was my first love. Let's say he was the first man I ever dated. He was my first everything, so to say. But right now I have hurt him to the extent that he doesn't want to see me or have anything to do with me. It's that serious. Hey Reddit, I would like to share with you all my horrible experiences after I cheated on my husband. But before that, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Alexis. I am 31 years old. I worked as an accountant in a marketing company. I have been married to one of my high school friends, Thomas, for 3 years, and we have known each other for more than a decade. Thomas is 33 years old. My husband and I met at high school when he got transferred from another school to my school back then. He was calm, smart, and intelligent. His intelligence was what made me become friends with him. Back then, I often teased him for being a nerd because he was always on medicated glasses. He hated it but liked it at some point and was later referred to as a nerd guy by both students and teachers. Since then, we have become friends. At that time, we were so close that we literally did everything together, both homeworks and projects. Thomas and I started dating. We went to proms and other high school fun programs. We definitely made highlights and were popular back then. After graduation from high school, we went to the same college and graduated together. We did everything together and eventually ended up married to each other. But right now, guys, I'm at the verge of losing my husband, who has been my best friend since high school. Honestly speaking, guys, I felt the weight of my guilt and the pain of betrayal. I also realized that karma had finally caught up with me, and it had hit me hard. I had hurt the person who loved and trusted me the most, all for the sake of a meaningless affair. I let my guard down. One of the moments that struck me the most was when Thomas finally got to know about my infidelity. His face was filled with anger and anguish. At that point, I knew that my actions had consequences and I had to face them. I couldn't run away from my responsibilities and the hurt that I had caused. Most importantly, I realized through this painful experience that my innocent flirting with a coworker had led me down a path of infidelity and betrayal. I had never imagined that a simple crush on a coworker would turn into a full-blown affair and cause so much damage. I lost my job and about losing my marriage, and I also lost my friendship with my husband. He filed for a divorce and made sure my life was a living hell. He left me penniless and no place to go. I had no relatives to go stay with, and I'm managing the little money I had on me for the time being. Currently, we're in court, and I'm trying all my best to see that Thomas doesn't get most of the property share. But right now, I can't say if the court ruling would be in my favor. The shock of everything that happened these past few months is overwhelming, and I couldn't believe the consequences of my actions would be this costly. I learned the hard way that cheating is never worth it. I should have known this earlier. The fact that my mother-in-law, Gianna, was happy to hear that my husband and I are going through divorce is quite shocking to me, but not surprising anyway. I mean, she was never in support of me and Thomas to be together right from when we started dating. She always acted cold towards me and didn't hide her irritation anytime she saw me. On countless occasions, Gianna strictly warned Thomas not to marry me. This created a lot of issues for Thomas and I. But at the end of the day, my husband still went ahead to get married to me. Honestly, sometimes having remembered all what happened in the past where Thomas had to go against his mom for me, the guilt hit me really hard. How I wished I never disappointed him the way I did. It was never my intention to cheat on Thomas. Considering how he fought for us to be together, I shouldn't have disappointed him. Guys, my husband was a supportive man and was one that stood by me. His anger was justified, and I regrettably deserve whatever punishment. But deep down, I hope he finds a way to forgive me and we would start again, hopefully. I mean, I still love my husband, and I hope he still feels the same way for me. When Gianna got the news, she didn't hesitate to come and humiliate me. The humiliation was painful and added to the revenge Thomas served me. As much as I don't want to talk about what happened, it seems like I have no other option but to say it. It's a chapter I really don't want to read, but I guess maybe I would be relieved after sharing this and would really like to take a little advice on what to do in order not to lose my husband. You know, like the saying goes, a problem shared is a problem half solved, right? I hope so too. So guys, without wasting much time, I would like to share where all of these started. Like I stated earlier, my infidelity was not intentional and I never thought of hurting my husband. My affair partner was Williston. He is 32 years old. Williston was my colleague. We both worked for the same company, just that Williston was a level ahead of me. By the way, just so we would be clear, Williston is also married. When I newly started working, I had only admired Williston because of how handsome he was. On a daily basis, he got lots of compliments from coworkers and clients, most especially from the ladies. I worked for 6 years for the company in my 5 years of working there. Williston and I never spoke or had any intimate friendship, not to talk of a relationship. We were just coworkers who were working so hard to make ends meet. Williston and I started talking just a few months back during our company's corporate party. The company usually does this every year. This year's own was unique because Williston and I were given the opportunity to plan the event. I was so excited to work with him. Of course, who wouldn't want to work with Williston back then? In fact, most of the female colleagues envied me at that time. Most of them wanted to work with him and even go out with him. At that time, I only admired Williston but didn't think of having anything to do with him. But as fate would have it, we became friends. At first, the work was cumbersome and demanding. We often stayed back at work after the usual closing hour. The event was one that was attended by a lot of people. We dare not mess it up at that time, otherwise our job would have gone in for it. So guys, after weeks of planning the corporate party, the deed day came and it was memorable. It was attended by clients, friends, and colleagues. The event came out nice and everything was in order. Williston and I were both rewarded for our hard work. At that time, I enjoyed working with Williston because he was smart and hardworking. Working with him wasn't that stressful despite the cumbersome nature of the event planning. That is it, guys. From being given the opportunity to plan the year's event and working together, Williston and I became friends and eventually started dating. We both knew about our marital status and didn't hide it from each other. We were so close to the extent that many people started gossiping about our friendship. One of my colleagues and friend, Leah, was the only one that knew that Williston and I were just more than friends. She got to know when she caught us on a date one evening at a restaurant. At that time, Williston and I usually met secretly, but we were caught by Leah. At first, she was shocked and surprised to see us together and lectured us how wrong it was for us to be together late at that time. I didn't think too much about it because I knew she wasn't going to tell anyone. Leah kept her mouth shut and didn't tell anyone about what she saw that day. I knew I could trust her, but it didn't last long because she couldn't keep up with the secret and stabbed me in the back. Yes, she did. I also was surprised when I learned about it. Apparently, Leah and I got a misunderstanding at work one fateful day over a mere issue that could be avoided. But unfortunately, it got heated and we cursed at each other. In order to get back at me, she did the unspeakable. Leah had the audacity to tell Williston's wife, Kate, about our affair. Kate, on the other end, didn't believe it and shrugged it off. She had so much faith in Williston, just as Thomas had for me. Of course, when Kate finally heard about her husband's infidelity, she didn't take it with him. She also was one of the people that came for me after our affair was made known to the public. The week that our affair was made known, something strange happened. It all started just like every normal day at the office. I was going about my day and was working on the pile of papers on my desk when I received a call from my Williston. It was unlike him because we agreed not to call each other on normal calls anytime we were at work. At that time, we had been having an affair for the last 2 months and had managed to keep it a secret from everyone, including our spouses except Leah, who knew about our secret affair. This was our little escape from our married lives, and it gave us a thrill. But that fateful day, something felt usual and I became uneasy. From the sound of Williston's voice, I knew something was wrong and he sounded so worried. He asked me to meet him in the boardroom where nobody would see us or suspect anything, and he ended the call. At that moment, I was confused and wondered why he sounded that way. So without thinking much, I hurriedly cleared my desk and went straight to the boardroom. On my way there, I composed myself so as to not raise any suspicions and also looked around before entering the boardroom. On entering there, I saw Williston walking back and forth and his hands were shaking. I asked him if everything was okay and held him. It was then Williston dropped the bombshell. He told me that he thinks someone knows about our affair at that time other than Leah. He also told me that he received a call from a private number earlier that day which told him that they knew all about our affair. They even threatened to tell our spouses if we don't end it immediately. My heart pounded so fast I couldn't believe what was happening. How could someone have found out about us? We had been so careful, making sure no one at the office suspected a thing. But here we were, caught in a lot of lies and deceit. I couldn't even think straight at that moment. We only knew that Leah was the only one that knew about our affair, but knew she wouldn't sell us out. Williston and I tried to come up with a plan, but our thoughts were clouded with fear and guilt. Just then, I suggested that we go on a business trip together, under the pretense of a last-minute client meeting. That seemed like the only way for us to get away from the mess and figure out what to do next. Of course, Williston saw reason with the idea and agreed immediately. We planned on going during the weekend of that week. Williston and I left the conference room and went back to our work. At that time, I couldn't help but think about who had given that threat. Everyone in that office became a suspect. Not even Leah was spared. The thought of it overwhelmed me, and I couldn't concentrate on the work I was doing. So guys, I left the office that day after the usual closing hour. As I drove back home, I was a little bit scared. A lot of thought kept running through my mind. I kept thinking, what if the caller had tipped my husband about our affair already? I managed to get home early that day. I met my husband at home making dinner for us to eat. Thomas told me he had been planning it for days and didn't want to let me know because he wanted it to be a surprise to me. Honestly, I was very impressed by it. At that moment, I forgot about everything that was bothering me and enjoyed the night with my husband. Thomas was very good in the kitchen. He makes better meals than me. Most times he does the cooking. The food was amazing and we had lots of drinks that night. After dinner, we both retired to bed. A few minutes after, Thomas slept off and I was restless throughout. I couldn't sleep. I kept looking at my husband and imagining how hurt he would be if he found out about my infidelity. To even top it up, I was planning on even going on a trip with my affair partner. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I couldn't think of anything other than that. I was in a tight spot. I had the option of opening up about my affair, but I was scared of my husband's reaction. The only option that I thought was good was continuing with whatever thing I had with Williston and pretend that everything was okay and nothing ever happened between us. A few days later, my husband proposed we go see my mother-in-law, Gianna, because we had barely visited her and she had requested to see us then. I didn't always like the idea of going to see her after all what she put me through during the period Thomas and I were dating. That was why I avoided her and always stayed back anytime Thomas wanted to visit. But that day, my husband insisted that we go together. After much persuasion, I accepted. We planned on going after work so as to have dinner there. That day, Thomas came to pick me up and we went together to see Gianna. We got to Gianna's house and discovered we weren't the only ones that came for dinner. Thomas's siblings, Jane, Emily, and their spouses were also there. It was more like a family dinner. The dinner went well, but as usual, Gianna kept throwing subs at me. It didn't bother me because I was used to it. We spent a few hours there and left. So guys, my world came crumbling shortly after the dinner date at Gianna's. I didn't know what was coming for me. The next morning, I woke up to see several missed calls from Williston. At that time, we were making plans on when to leave for the trip. I kept thinking of the excuse to give Thomas which he would believe and promised to get back to Williston as soon as I told my husband. So when I saw the calls, I thought maybe that was what he wanted to ask me. But to my greatest surprise, it turned out to be something else. I called Williston back but didn't pick up not until a few minutes later. Immediately, I went to the bathroom to receive the call. It was then Williston told me that he couldn't go with the plan anymore because his wife, Kate, had gotten to know about our affair and filed for a divorce. I couldn't say anything for a few seconds. I was surprised, just when I was trying to wrap my head around what he had just said. Williston dropped another bombshell. He told me he was ending things with me and proposed we go our separate ways. He didn't even wait for me to say anything and he ended the call on me. All this while, my husband was eavesdropping at my phone conversation with Williston. The phone was kept on loudspeaker and so he heard everything. At that point, I didn't know what to do. I tried calling Williston back, but he didn't answer the phone. I took my bath and left the bathroom. I went inside the room and found Thomas shuffling through his wardrobe. He pretended that he didn't hear anything and I acted normal. At that time, I thought maybe he knew nothing. I got dressed and went to work. That day at work, I felt like I was walking on eggshells. I avoided Williston because I was hurt. He had the audacity to break up with me on the phone after everything we had shared together. Williston also reciprocated the energy and also avoided me, not wanting to give away any hints about our relationship and breakup. But then Williston's words were weighing heavy on my mind and I couldn't focus on my work. As the day went on, I received a call from my husband. He sounded upset and wanted to know if everything was okay or if there's anything he should know that I wasn't telling him. But I reassured him that everything was fine. My husband didn't buy the excuse and he insisted on coming to my office to talk and hung up on me. Not long after, Thomas came over to the office. My heart pounded so fast that I wasn't myself. I knew that something was wrong and maybe someone had told him everything, and I was about to face the consequences of my actions. My husband's eyes were filled with hurt and betrayal as he confronted me about my affair. I couldn't deny it any longer and I told him everything. He was devastated, and I could feel the weight of my actions crushing down on me. It was at that moment I realized that he had heard my conversation with Williston. Thomas was so angry that he demanded to know who my affair partner was, but I kept mute and didn't say anything. His voice attracted the attention of everyone at the office. Everybody became interested and wanted to know what was going on. I was so embarrassed and was thinking of how to leave the office and save myself from the embarrassment. Just then, Leah came out of the crowd and revealed who my affair partner was. She told everyone that Williston and I had been secretly meeting up for months. Everyone was surprised and started glaring at Williston. My husband didn't understand what was happening because at that time he didn't know Williston was my colleague at the office. Just then, Leah pointed at Williston and my husband didn't hesitate to punch him in the face. They got into a fight and my husband showed no mercy. Everyone present at the scene started doing live stream. It was so embarrassing. My affair was the topic of the town. Not long after Williston's wife, Kate, came to the office. It was at that moment I realized that Leah was behind everything that was happening. She had set Williston and I up, and I even learnt that she was behind the private number that threatened us. Kate walked up to me and gave me a slap across my face. It was so hot that I couldn't feel my face for a few minutes. The slap I got from Williston's wife's face also made headlines. After all that happened at the office, my husband Thomas filed for a divorce the next day. After everything that happened at the office, my boss immediately dismissed Williston and I. We were asked to vacate the premises, and our sacked letter was emailed to us a few days later. My husband, on the other hand, was very angry with me. The embarrassment at the office took a toll on me. To top it all, my husband sent me out of the house. Update: Hey Reddit, I'm back with an update. So guys, Thomas and I never came back. I tried everything possible in order for him to forgive me, but he didn't. The few times I went over to the house to plead with him yielded no results. Rather, it was one humiliation or the other. After I was sent out, Gianna came over to the house to stay with Thomas. Sometimes she wouldn't let me in and kept embarrassing me. I won't blame her because I was the one that let my guard down. She saw a perfect thing to use and mock me. Gianna even joined forces with Emily and Jane to turn against me. They wouldn't want to speak with me any longer. So guys, after a few visits to court, the ruling was fair to some extent. Of course, my husband had the majority of the shares and I was left with little. I can't say but to be grateful for having something even though it was a piece of cake. We both finally signed the divorce papers and we went our separate ways. Honestly, it was very hard for me to let go of my husband. I couldn't go close to him because I was ashamed of myself. Inasmuch as I wanted to talk to him and also show him how sorry I was, but I couldn't. His eyes were daring and he didn't show how irritated he was seeing me. The few times we were in court, my husband even ignored me. We both went out separate ways and my ex-husband blocked me on all platforms. It was tough being a divorced woman, but right now I have moved on. I'm sure Thomas also has moved on even before the divorce was finalized. So guys, right now as I'm writing this, I'm now a divorced woman with no job. I'm trying to piece my life back together and see if I could get myself with something doing that can earn me an income. Every day I can't help but regret what I have done. I wish I had never let myself get caught up in an office fling, and I hope that such mistake never repeats itself again. Now I know that the road to infidelity is a dangerous one, and the consequences can be devastating. It was a big lesson to learn, and I guessed I learned the hard way. And with a heavy heart and a newfound understanding of the power of karma, I have started working and rebuilding myself to be a better person.